All right, Ted, that's better. Good morning again, everybody. Hey, good morning. Thank you, Darren. It is good for us to be here. Good morning, everybody. I have a great friend of mine with me today, and it takes work changing your mind, and that's such a cliche, but it takes work to change your mind. And so, kind of paint a picture for us. How did David Pride grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up, the youngest of three older brothers. And so there's four boys in the family, plus my dad and then my poor mom. And so,
Amen.
um,
Amen. All
we
that
were a
testosterone.
kind of, what's that?
All that testosterone.
That's for sure. There's no lack of that. Um, and it's kind of interesting. My family dynamic is that I have my two oldest brothers are like close to 20 years older than me.
Okay.
And then they took like a break, and then they had my brother Michael, who's a couple years older than me, and then they wanted to make sure they finally got one right, so
Right.
they had me. And so what's kind of unique about my family, grew up, we were your typical white evangelical, middle class, pretty privileged family,
Right.
And I grew up in a family where we were taught to read the Word of God, you attend church on Sundays, Wednesdays, Friday nights,
Yeah.
sometimes Saturdays. You go to
Right.
youth group getaways on the
Right.
weekends. You go to Bible camp in the summers. You have Bible men's leadership groups around the dinner table. Like the whole
Yeah.
deal. And I was really fortunate to grow up
Right.
the way I did,
Amen.
with such a supportive family. But as I've gotten older, a lot of the things that are very normal in a state like Maine, which is very lily white,
Right.
and not very diverse. A lot of the thought patterns and a lot of the things that I was taught or just kind of picked up via osmosis, I never even really knew weren't normal or
Right.
were blatantly racist, and really didn't even know.
Right. And so what has happened recently to kind of make you question, wait a minute now, because we had a great dialogue offline last week, and it was a very intimate conversation, and it really blessed my heart because you see David in a whole new light now. You know what I'm saying? So what has really caused you to pause and say, wait a minute, let me rethink some things?
Yeah. So the big, there's a few things that happened that kind of created this perfect storm of
Oh, that's good.
realizing what was in my own heart that I didn't even know, or maybe that I chose to not recognize. I think it's probably
Okay.
more honest.
Okay.
And it began with my mother passed early due to early onset Alzheimer's disease, and shortly after she passed, or shortly before she passed, I started speaking around the country,
Right.
And kind of sharing my mother's story of how she grew up in in abject poverty in inner city New Jersey and an abusive home and all this. And the message that I shared was a message of hope and motivation, and it took me to a lot of inner city schools and
Right.
a lot of really rough areas and places in America that I didn't even know existed. Like I had no idea people lived like this in America.
Right.
Like just I'm in Maine. I'm middle class white dude
Right.
living like la 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 life.
Yeah.
And when my heart really began to change and break was actually
Wow.
I think it was my second professional speaking event was at the Cleveland School for Science and Medicine, which is an inner city school in Cleveland.
Wow.
They serve a lot of underprivileged kids who come from broken families or children who've been rescued from abusive families, and they're gifted intelligence-wise, and they're gifted with their ability and their learning ability, but they were not gifted in the family
Right.
department. Like they kind of got a raw deck of cards. And I remember speaking there, and afterwards talking with a lot of these young kids who were coming up to me, and they were sharing with me their stories
Right.
and the different things that they've experienced, and the different ways that racism has played a factor in their development, and sharing stories that I'd never even thought of. Like I
Right.
literally never even thought of.
Right.
But what really began to light the flame was that night I was going out to dinner, and I happened to bump into a guy who worked for a radio station.
Right.
And he said, "What are you doing in town?" And I told him, and I said, "I'm here speaking at the school. I talk about overcoming long seasons of challenge and setback." And he asked me, he said, "Oh, man, that could be like a great topic for our show. Do you want to come on the radio tonight?"
Wow.
And I'm like, "Okay, sure." So I go on the radio tonight with these radio dudes, and it was myself, another white dude named Will, and then the producer, and then the owner of the channel named Darvio, who happened to be a black dude. And I shared my message and all this,
right.
and then afterwards I was talking with Darvio and said, "Man, I've just never experienced
right.
Some of the things that I heard today from students." And I said, I guess I never really thought much about racism, to be
right.
honest. Like, in my family, I was raised that black people get angry about racism because
right.
they don't want to get over it. That's what my parents always said. Like, they don't want to move on. Like, hey,
right.
slavery's over, get over it. And that's what I allowed myself to think and believe.
Right.
And Darvio began sharing with me about his grandfather, and he was telling me about how his grandfather grew up, having difficulty even purchasing property in Cleveland. And then he began sharing with me about how his great-grandfather didn't even ever learn how to sign his name.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, I'm like, holy cow, that's like 2 generations. Like, that's like one removed from a dude who never even thought, who was never even told, like, your name isn't even worth knowing how to spell.
Wow.
And my heart was like, what? Like I didn't even know what I just heard. I didn't really understand it. And then my next gig happened to be in Englewood, Chicago, which if you Google it, dudes like me aren't typically walking around.
It's not a tourist attraction.
There were 67 people murdered the weekend that I arrived in gang violence and gun shooting. And the big contrast happened when I was landing in Chicago, and I posted up on Facebook and said, I'm landing and going to speak in a neighborhood where 67 young people were murdered due to gang violence this weekend. I just hope my mother's story can touch their lives. And the reception that post got from my white friends was, you better duck and cover. And then it was,
wow.
Oh my God, these people need to learn that violence isn't the answer. The cops need to do a better job. These people don't realize that things are their own fault, and they just need to get a job and get over it. And what's interesting is, for the first 32 years of my life, if I saw a African American man standing on the corner asking for money, or if I saw some reverend on TV talking about the incomes of lower income black neighborhoods and the opportunity that isn't available, my go-to reaction was, get over it. They're lazy.
Right.
This is America. Go get a job.
Right.
And I remember getting into Chicago and pulling into the back end of the school where I'd drive around barbed wire fencing, where the security guard met me at my car and escorted me into the school, where I was searched and I was told to not leave the cafeteria. The headmaster came down and let me know that 80% of his students would never receive a paycheck in their entire life.
Wow.
And he went on to share with me, he said, a lot of this, David, is generational. He said, not only will these young men never have a job, but their dad never had a job. Their dad's dad never had a job, and his dad was a slave.
My Lord.
And here I am, like a white dude. I went to a high school with, I think, one black guy, one black dude in my entire high school of 600-700 kids. Yeah. And so I remember speaking to the kids, and afterwards driving through the neighborhood, like trying to get out of the neighborhood, to be honest. And my heart was totally broken because I'd been exposed to things that I'd never seen before or heard before. And I remember I finally got to this Walmart, and I cried like a baby.
Wow.
Like, I didn't even know what I was feeling, because my entire life I had grown up casually racist, and I wasn't putting on hoods, and I wasn't out there dropping the N-word on people and doing things like that.
Right.
But you know what I was doing? I was using jokes that said the N-word.
Right.
Because my white friends laughed. And I didn't mean it hatefully. I just meant that as a joke.
Right.
And so, and my parents shared racist jokes and racist comments and things that, as a white Christian, you can justify it by saying, come on, it's a joke.
Right.
Don't you have a sense of humor?
Right.
Like, they don't mean that. They're not out there voting for slavery. Come on, and what happened within the community that I grew up with when it comes to racism is the statement of, we're not racist, but the flip side of that coin that was never said was, we're also not anti-racist.
That's right. That's exactly right.
What would happen is, when you grow up a white man in a white state with privilege that you don't even know is privilege,
right,
and all of your friends and family and your church family is not racist, but definitely not anti-racist.
Right, right.
And in your own church, you hear things like, we need to get black people in this church if we want better music. You begin to realize, holy cow.
Wow.
I'm a racist. I didn't even know I have racist.
Yeah, racist by association.
Racist by association, and racist by actively not allowing God to touch my heart and change me. Because it's much easier to read my Bible and bury myself in my faith and memorizing Mrs. Lundy's scriptures, God bless her soul.
Amen. Amen.
But not actually turn around and apply those lessons in life.
Right.
And so, as a white Christian in New England, or in Maine specifically,
this is good.
It's really, really easy to go up and lay hands on your white brother or sister in church and pray for them, and pray for their sick wife, or pray for their kid who has cancer or whatever. But you know what's really hard?
Come on.
Correcting your brother when he's saying something racist that everybody's laughing at. You know, what's really hard is taking a stance in church or against your church community when they're supporting a blatantly racist president.
Right. Exactly.
Those things are what God, I believe, at least the God that I serve, which appears to be much, much different than the majority of the white Christian evangelical community.
Right.
I believe God calls us to not just speak up when it's popular and it makes you feel good.
Right.
But to also speak up when it's one-on-one. And more importantly, I believe God calls the white folks like me out there that have been casually racist their whole life to apologize to those people they've been racist to, even if they laughed at your jokes.
Yeah. And share with everybody, David, you have had to turn your back on some financial opportunities because some of your employers were expressing those same sentiments of your brotherhood. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And you had to turn down and say, listen, I cannot support that in clear conscience. I cannot support your agenda. Kind of unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do marketing consulting as a profession, and you know, a great way of me justifying endorsing racist beliefs and racist actions, what I've said as early as 14 months ago. So I don't want to make this sound like I'm a 39-year-old reformed racist.
That's why we having this conversation today. That very reason.
Right. This is not something that I'm a proudly reformed racist. This is a daily decision I make to stop thoughts that organically happen in my brain that make my life easier.
Right.
It's not easy to stop myself from making the assumptions that I heard other people make as I was growing up, whether it's within the church, within business, within the business community I grew up in, or within my family.
Right.
And so, as a marketing professional, I quickly figured out in the 10 years that I've been self-employed that, hey, I can work with all types of clients. And I really took pride in telling people, oh, I can serve people that I disagree with politically because I'm a professional. And that's what professionals do. Well, during this last presidential election, if you kept your mouth shut with Donald Trump as president, you know, there's a lot of things you're close with, but God ain't one of them.
Yeah, come on now.
So for me, as I had clients who were conservative, liberal, down the middle, and everything else, I had several clients that were much more aligned with either selling more guns to every single person on the planet and filling them full of fear that someone's going to walk into the mall and shoot it up every single day.
Right.
They were pro the former president, and very open about it. And they were also, very keen to, make people believe that Black Lives Matters is some sort of terrorist organization,
right,
and that it's by a white person saying that Black Lives Matter, we're saying that white lives don't, or that cops' lives don't, or that blah 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 blah. Like all these things we say to make sure that we don't get uncomfortable.
right.
And so what I saw in my business initially was an exodus of clients that supported the former president.
Right.
As I became more and more open about my beliefs and challenged them on theirs,
right,
they became more and more uncomfortable. And I realized, hey, my God's doing something in my heart. And I'm not a minister, I'm not a preacher or anything like that. But I know that in my heart, God spoke to me and told me, I don't want you using your skills
That's
to
good.
endorse or align with beliefs that are nothing like Jesus. That are nothing at all like Jesus. That have nothing to do with building up the community and
Right.
building people's trust and loving on people. And so there were some clients that I had to drop. There were some clients that quickly dropped me.
Right.
I got numerous messages on social media from former clients warning me about my actions. What was even more heartbreaking was I heard from probably a dozen of the 110 schools that I've spoken at in the past 3 years. I heard directly from principals on Instagram letting me know that they would never hire me to speak ever again because of the stance that I was taking against Donald Trump. And so for a lot of these people, what they were trying to do is stifle my voice by saying, you're going to lose money. Like you're not going to get another speaking gig. You're not going to land another client because you're not going with the flow and just endorsing this animal in the office. But I don't believe that, that God calls us to just keep our mouths shut. But B, as a white man, knowing that, I had 3,000 or 4,000 mostly young white kids following me on Instagram.
Right.
They darn well need to hear about systemic racism. They need to hear about why Black Lives Matter. They need to hear why yes, all lives do matter. But guess what? That's an old message, and that's a message that leaves room for racism.
That's good. That's a good point.
The issue isn't with all lives mattering.
That's right.
The issue is that my friend Darvio can get pulled over in Cleveland and held on the side of the road for 4.5 hours as they check to see if there was a black man on the street that committed a crime recently.
Wow.
And I can get pulled over, sweet talk, tell them I'm a motivational speaker, and they let me go in 10 minutes.
Yeah, we had
that is the issue.
That we had that same conversation with a joint mutual friend about John Tantillo, and we broached that subject, and he said, Dr. Sims, I'm understanding better now. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so now you're at a crossroad, and
right.
Man, since we this is Suicide Prevention Month, Awareness Month. You were at a crossroads because what you are coming into contrast with, I was taught about this God in a white evangelical world, but this God does not match the Jesus that I know. I heard Dr. Sim talk about him on the way to work on Periscope, and that Jesus that I'm at a crossroad, and tell everybody you didn't want to be here for a moment. And you challenge God, and I tell people, I say, hey, challenge him if you want to, cause you want to talk to him, he'll talk to you. Tell us that story, man. Cause man, that brought tears to my eye. Man, I got goosebumps when we were talking. You said, God, if you real. Kind of talk. Let's swerve here and talk about the day you met God, David.
I'm going to put my dog outside this door real quick. Otherwise, you're going to keep hearing her cry. And then I'll tell you.
Take your time. Man, y'all, this is a great interview. Share this with your friend. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so. I got a new follower here. One of my madam buddies, Darren, is with us. Hey, Miss Vanessa. Hey, everybody. Good morning again, everybody. We're talking about mindset and changing your mind and being brought up a certain way, and some things start to happen to you in your life and make you like, wait a minute now, That's not adding up. And David is going through his testimony, but now we're asking David the question about the day that he met God for himself. So David, paint that picture for us.
Yeah. That actual experience that you're referencing happened a bit before this speaking, but basically what happened that led to my first major experience with God. And what I mean by that, I think it's important to explain when I say experience with God. My dad used to say that there's book Christians,
yeah,
and then there's Christians who have had an experience with Christ.
That's right.
And I think what separates, and I don't know if that's the right term, but I think what maybe differentiates those groups of people is once you feel like you've really had an experience with God.
Amen.
There's really nothing that can take that away from you.
That's right. That's right.
And so I think for people who don't have that experience or don't seek to have an experience like that,
right,
it's much easier to just kind of write things off and just give up. And so for me personally, the first time, actually, I'm a cancer survivor, and so what had happened is I was 20 years old, and I had just come through 6 months of chemotherapy, 8 weeks of radiation, and we were going into early spring here in New England.
Okay.
And my girlfriend just broke up with me, who had been with me for 3 years, even through the treatments and all this stuff. And man, I was down and out. Like I was just depressed and sad and really alone. And so I decided, I didn't want to live anymore, basically. But I also knew that, like, I didn't want my mother to find her kid with a hole in his head in the basement. I had enough logic in that. And so I decided that, like, if I died in another way, then no one would know I meant to.
Right.
And so in New England, we have a mountain called Mount Washington, which is New England's highest peak. It's really big. I think it's 4,000 something feet. Has the record for the world's highest wind of like 101 miles an hour, higher measured wind. And it's a really dangerous mountain. People die on it every single year. Right. And I decided that, since I didn't want to, take my own life, but I'd be okay if something else did, then I was going to go and hike that in the early spring when there's about 14 to 18 inches of snow on the mountain. And I wasn't a hiker. Like, I'm not someone who hikes. I mean, I do now, but I wasn't back then. Right. On top of that, I have existing lung damage from all the treatments. Okay. And my oncologist specifically said, don't go do anything strenuous on your lungs. And so 2 weeks later, I said, okay, sure, I'll go hike New England's highest mountain completely alone. And so for supplies, I went down to my basement and I took out my Snoopy sleeping bag made of 100% cotton. Comes up to about my nipples. And I threw that in my car. I packed 1 gallon of water, 2 peanut butter sandwiches, 2 pairs of jeans, and an Adidas windbreaker, like a thin plastic Adidas windbreaker. And I drove to New Hampshire. Wow. And I sat at the base of the mountain. And I said to God, I said, God, if you don't meet me on the way up this mountain, I'm never coming back down. And I knew in my heart that I was totally fine with never coming back down. And I knew the way I would do it is I would just keep walking. And people would find me someday and assume I got lost, and my mom wouldn't feel like I killed myself, and nobody would ever know what actually happened. Right. And that night I set out, and Mount Washington is a big mountain. You can do it in one day, but a lot of people don't. Right. And so that night I slept in a lean-to next to Hermit Lake. And so if you guys Google it, you'll find it. And the lean-to is an open-faced lean-to, which I didn't know was actually open-faced. And so you can imagine sleeping above 18 inches of snow in an open-faced lean-to off a lake where the mist is rolling in off the lake and hitting your cotton sleeping bag and jeans and all this. Wow. And I woke up once in the middle of the night, and I was really hungry and thirsty. And without thinking, I ate my peanut butter sandwiches, and then I drank my water. And it didn't even dawn on me, like, you're halfway up a mountain in the middle of the night with 18 inches of snow, and now you have nothing to eat and nothing to drink. Right. I went back to bed, and I was freezing cold, literally freezing cold. And I woke up again, and I was covered in ice from about my neck to my feet and my sleeping bag, where they had like a thin layer of ice had come over the cotton, and I was just freezing cold. And I was doing my best to be open to hearing from God, like
Right.
all the things I heard in youth camps and all this other stuff. So like I'd do like, you know, Bible Russian roulette where you kind of swing the pages and wait for God to like, hey, bing, there you go, like these are your lottery numbers, you know. And
Right.
I didn't have any cool experiences. Half the stuff I read was like some random middle of the story thing where I didn't know what the heck was going on. And I
Right.
kind of gave up on it. I said, whatever, I'll go to bed and we'll deal with this in the morning. And I was trying to go to sleep and I was just freezing cold. And a couple hours into it, I remember being asleep, but kind of like half awake, and all of a sudden feeling really warm. And I didn't pee my pants, and that was my first thought.
Okay.
But I said, I don't know why I'm so warm, you know?
Right.
And I began thinking on it, and all of a sudden I felt God speak to me and say, "This is my love for you." And it was like He was in the lean-to with me. Like, it was like He was sitting there with me that night. And all of a sudden, I knew what my dad meant by there's Christians who have an experience with Christ, and there's Christians who just read about Him.
That's right.
And so I remember I felt like, holy cow! Like I think I just heard from God. I think that's what the deal was, but I wasn't certain. And I'm also a pretty big skeptic. I was raised to be really, really skeptical.
Right.
And so, you know, the next morning I woke up and I was cold and wet and halfway up a mountain that nobody was on because there was avalanche warnings. If you Google Tuckerman's Ravine, I slept basically at the base of Tuckerman's, and I went up what's called Lion's Head Trail. I remember, and I'm above tree line, and that's when I realized that I don't know how to read a map. I don't actually even have a recent map of the mountain.
Right.
Like I'm using this old New England hiking book with like a map this big, you know, and I'm walking up the mountain, and now I'm up on the rocks where it's pretty jagged and just really steep. And I realize I don't have a map. I don't know where I am. I don't have food and I don't have water. And I've been walking for like 3.5, 4 hours at this point. And
wow.
I decided, I remember looking at my watch and saying, I'm going to keep walking for another hour. And if I don't see signs of the summit, then I'm going to turn around. And I remember turning around and looking back down the mountain and realizing I have no idea where I am. Like, there's snow on the rocks. Like, I am above tree line.
Wow.
Everything looks the same when you're up that high. Like, I've never done this before. I'm a complete idiot. Cell phones back then weren't really like the thing to do.
Right.
And so I just kept walking, and I just kind of said, well, I know there's a top, and up top there's a weather station. And so I kept walking, and it was almost exactly an hour into it, I began to hear the whir of the wind blowing over the top of the silo of the weather station up there, and so I knew I was close. And so I kept walking, and eventually I made it to the top, and I got up there. I remember sitting down on a bench that was up there, because a lot of people drive up Mount Washington in the summers for the view, because it's beautiful. I remember sitting up there on this bench and looking out over the mountain, and my first thought was, oh my God, I can't believe the visitor station isn't open. Like, I thought the visitor station would be open so I could fill up my water, take a dump, you know, like get some food, like something, you know, like recover a little. Well, no, of course it's not. It's winter, you know, like they don't want idiots like me up there.
Right.
And so I realized, okay, I'm kind of screwed at this point. And I'm sitting on this bench, but I'm also thinking about what I felt like God said to me. And that's when God kind of spoke to me again and said, you don't have to climb a mountain to find me.
Wow.
And I remember hearing this and being like, oh my gosh, like what a simple revelation that just makes so much sense.
Wow. That's awesome.
And I stood up and I began looking out from the top of the summit, and it's just beautiful up there in the middle of the presidential mountain range. And I realized one thing, I'm only halfway done. Like, how am I getting back down? Like, I don't know how I'm getting back down.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then the second thing that happened is, believe it or not, a maintenance man showed up.
What you say?
Explain that. And he unlocked the visitor center for me so I could go in and use the bathroom, fill my water bottle, buy a Snickers bar. And I don't know where he went after that. And I began to think about, okay, I've heard from God, but how do I get down? Like, I don't know how to get down from here.
Right.
And there's a 6.5 mile road that's called the Auto Road that goes up Mount Washington and winds up it. There's great YouTube videos of people racing up that mountain, believe it or not. And I said, well, I'll hitchhike home. That's what I'll do. And so I started walking down the super steep 6.5 mile road, and my feet was sloshing, and I could feel my feet bleeding in my boots because all the blisters had broken open at this point, and I was freezing cold. And I kid you not, I come around one of the corners, and up from behind me comes an old Lincoln Continental.
Wow.
And I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is weird, you know? And it's this little old couple, and they pull over, and they go, you need a ride? And I go, yeah, I'm just trying to get back down to the base where my car is. And they go, did you find what you were looking for?
Amen.
And the dude popped his trunk for me to put my bag in it. And he had golf clubs in his trunk. Why would he have golf clubs in his trunk? You know, when there's snow on the top of Mount Washington, when it's the end of winter in New England. Who knows? Like I'm not a big mystic person. I mean, it very well could have been some old couple that was confused and wanted to drive up the auto road thinking it'd be fun to look out over the, like, they'd be stupid, but could be.
Wow.
And I remember getting in the back of their car, and they drove me down the mountain and dropped me off at the base of the mountain. And I remember making just one last promise to God, and I said, God, whenever I tell this story, I will not ever shy away from sharing your part of it.
Amen.
Like, what a great adventure story.
Wow. Man, that's made for television. That's television.
Right. But it's only a great story because the God that I serve, the God that Black people serve, the God that Latino people serve, the God that Chinese people serve, took a second to say, you don't have to climb a mountain to find me.
Wow. That's powerful.
When I think about white evangelical Christians who are serving two gods right now, they have the God that makes them really comfortable, that makes them feel really good about condemning people,
right,
that makes them feel really great about preaching about all the things that they're against.
That's right.
But yet endorsing a man that stands for all of those things. I think those people, they all got mountains that they need to climb.
Oh, that's good.
You know, and
that's good.
Thankfully, the same God that has led me to allow my heart to break and realize how many evil things I've been involved with.
Right.
How many racist, divisionist statements I made, especially in high school. He still chose to meet me on that mountain.
Wow.
And he can still choose to meet other white evangelicals who may have accidentally ended up on your channel. You know,
this is
and
so
help
good.
their hearts break.
Amen.
But you have to get to a point where that pain and that hurt, you just have to be able to recognize it and not wait for God to heal it, because right, some of that pain is God healing it.
That's right.
Some of that pain and discomfort,
that's right,
is God saying, no, dude, you need to feel this.
That's right. Yeah.
You think it's tough to recognize you're being a racist?
Wow.
Think about how your dad's friend felt when he would yell, you know, all N-words in the back. So you think it hurts your heart because you realize that, you know, you made a lot of racist jokes and you'd have, you know, 101 black jokes on your bookshelf as a kid, wow, and you guys would read them to each other on the dinner table, wow, and still say you're not racist?
Wow.
You think that recognizing that hurts your heart? Well, just imagine of the generations that have grown up being the butt end of that hatred.
Wow.
Not a joke. It's a hatred. And what's even more sad is, as I've tried to grow and get counsel from other people and read a lot of books that made me really, really uncomfortable.
This is good.
I felt there's a lot of people I need to apologize to. And I reached out to some kids from high school. Now, my high school wasn't very diverse, but there were 3 people specifically that I knew I needed to apologize to. One of which was a dear friend of mine from high school, lived in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he was a Native American kid, but his skin wasn't white. And so if you're like me, they're not white. So they all go into the same bucket of jokes.
Right.
And I remember talking with him, and I messaged him on Facebook, and his name is Joe, and I said, Joe, I'm out here speaking at schools right now about navigating long seasons of challenge and setback and helping people love on people better. And I said, I'm beginning to realize how much of a terrible hypocrite I am. And I said, the jokes I said to you about your heritage and your skin color and how my Nana would be uncomfortable if you came in the kitchen.
Right.
Even though you laughed at those jokes, that only makes that hatred even worse.
Right.
Like, even though back then I could tell these racist jokes and everybody would laugh, and even my Native American friend or a black friend would laugh at those jokes, and then maybe he'd say a black joke too.
Right.
That's only because I helped desensitize him
to it.
To that type of hatred.
Right. Right.
As a joke. And I think specifically white people, we're really, really good, and I am really, really good at brushing things off as a joke so that I don't have to think about the long-term impact of what I've said, right, or what I've said about that person, or because if it made other people laugh, then what's the harm, you know?
Amen.
But the fact is that white people have no idea, or I'll speak for myself, I have no idea what it's like to be anything other than white.
Right. I understand.
Anything other than white. You know?
I understand.
And I think about when I was in Chicago at Englewood, that headmaster made a comment to me where he said, Martin Luther King once said that the white man will tell the black man to pull himself up by the bootstraps. But what the white man doesn't realize is that the black man was born without boots.
That's right.
And there's real danger in the white evangelical community right now, where we think that we can run around and speak in tongues and lay hands on people and pray for healing, right, and pray for all these fancy things and get our $1,400 designer Nike shoes and lead our mega church pastors,
right,
but not recognize the racism in our own facility. And it needs to be talked about. And it needs to be talked about if your church is 99% white.
Thank you.
It still needs to be talked about.
That's so good, David.
And there's a great book that addresses this called Anxious to Talk About It, What Happens When the White Church Talks About Racism in America. Right. And it's written by a Jewish rabbi. So here, I'm a heretic now. I can already hear it from my evangelical friends.
You hear it, right?
But it's a fantastic book that really challenges white evangelicals to look at their own hearts. And more importantly, to not think it's going to be easy.
That's
and
right.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Like, I used to listen to this old gospel Christian gangster rap group. I know it's kind of funny, but they're called the Gospel Gangsters. And,
right,
and
right.
one of the rappers in it recently passed, who I did some marketing for, and his name was Solo. And Solo had this line in one of the lyrics, and he said, "Only God can understand the tears of a black man."
That's right.
And man, as a young man, like, I used to listen to that music and be like, yeah, only God can understand the tears of a black man. No idea what I'm saying.
Right.
Like, no idea. And so privileged that I can hear this stuff, and to me, it's like a video game. Like, man, I'd love to go into Compton. I'd love to see this stuff. Like
right.
Without ever even realizing
wow,
how fortunate I am. But how much work needs to be done.
That's good. That's good.
And how much work still needs to be done.
That's good.
And God doesn't call us to live easy lives. He calls us to love on people that are unlovable and to love on people in general and to lead by example.
That's right.
He doesn't say, like, hey, dude, like, go out there, read the Bible, lay hands on people, start speaking in tongues, then interpret it, and then go and, let everybody know that, no, Donald Trump's just using locker room talk.
Right. It's deep, man. This conversation is so needed, and I thank you for being so transparent and genuine. And I love you as a brother, and you are a good friend, Dave. And we thank you for being here today, because we had that conversation. I said, man, you got to come on the show and let's talk about it, because it's your heart your heart, that's what gives us hope, people of color, because we understand the situation, we understand the issue, but it takes the change that needs to happen, that's evolving in your heart,
Right.
to happen on a larger scale, and I love you. You're a great friend, and I love your sensitivity, and I just thank you for being David Pride.
Well, I love you too, and I really, really appreciate your friendship and counsel and advice and all that.
Yeah, and man, we love the hair.
Thank you. Yeah, I can keep chicken nuggets in it for when I'm hungry. So.
Man, and your wife, she just stepped in for a moment. Beautiful wife. You guys are y'all are rock stars, man. And so what's next for you? What's next for you, David?
Yeah. So one thing I'll shoehorn in there.
Okay.
This journey with my own racism is unique to me, because even though I grew up in a Christian evangelical home,
right,
my wife grew up in a family that wasn't raised in a strictly Christian, like a strict Christian boundaries life.
Right.
But guess what? My wife was raised to love everybody unconditionally.
Wow.
So here I am, this born again evangelical Christian, quote you scriptures, teach a Sunday school class, racist. And my wife, who didn't grow up in the church, grew up with a better understanding of God's love than I did.
Wow.
And thankfully, my wife stuck with me through the journey of the man that she married to the man that I hope I am evolving into. And because of her wisdom and intelligence and her heart, I feel encouraged to continue to become a better person.
That's good.
Equally as important, she calls me out when I'm being casually racist and don't know it,
right,
or think maybe I can just slide in a hateful comment,
right,
because it's funny.
Right. And that's the point. That's the point of the show, and the point of this month, the work that it takes. How much of a conditioned situation we all are in, just and to your point earlier about your friend, how he would receive the joke like, ha ha ha. I'm laughing because I'm desensitized. It's very hurtful, but we've joked about it for so long. And it's hard because now you're 39, 32, 37 years. This was your life. And now you are unpacking all of that. Like Shrek said, I got layers. And you're peeling all those layers back. And I appreciate the journey that you're on.
Yeah.
And you're a good friend, man. And that's why the Lord is blessing you and your family. You got opportunities coming left and right, and God is expanding your territory. And so how can people get in touch with the social media whisperer?
Yeah, so you can, I'm on all social media at David A. Pride. So David A., my middle initial, Pride. I'm on YouTube, release new videos every single week. The YouTube channel is called Finding Life's Balance. So it's business marketing and finding life's balance, where I offer a lot of marketing advice, entrepreneurship advice, and mental health. And, talking about some of these topics also. But anything, Twitter, Instagram, all that is at David A. Pride is where you'll find me. Come find me on Instagram, like a picture. Ever since all those principals banned me, my Instagram reach is nearly dead. So some of those guys did get that right. When all those people started blocking my photos and videos, I watched not only did I lose about 1,000 followers, but I also watched my own reach diminish.
Right.
But God's burning away the chaff. So
that's so good. Well, listen, man, you continue to be awesome, man, and I love you. And we'll look to connect real soon, man. And I love you. High five, man. Bam.
Yeah, I love you too.
Hey, well, y'all, that was David Pride, man. That was such an awesome interview, man. And it just lets you know how ingrained a lot of this stuff is, And so my guest tomorrow, let's see. My guest tomorrow is Kendra Crump. She reached out to me. I reached out to her at about the same time. And she said, I was going to ask you, did you have a talk show? I want to be on your talk show. She's a comedian. She's an influencer. And she has a talk show. And so we're going to talk about just the work it takes to be you. And it's going to be at 11 a.m. On Friday. So she's excited to be here. I'm excited to have her. So we're going to run to a quick break and we'll be right back. We got to talk about a little personal development.
Hey now, if you'd like to donate today to the Dr. Walter Sims Show, please donate at Cash App, $Walter H. Sims. Yes, that's Cash App, $WALTERHSIMS. That's Cash App, $Walter H. Sims.
Hey, listen, you're right there on my YouTube channel. Thank you for being here today. If you will, take a moment to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll go and know when I go live. And we've had so much content this year. And if you would take a moment just to kind of peruse some of the videos. And again, thank Darren for being here. Thank Ms. Vanessa. Thank David Pride for being our guest today. And it's just, y'all, we got a platform. You know, it may not be as large as others, you know what? But we have a voice. We're using our voice, and we're encouraging people, you know. And I just thank you for being a part of our journey, and just continue to be awesome. All right, we got a power word for today. Come on, power word. Personal development. Personal development includes activities that improve awareness and identify, develop talents and potential, build human capital and facilitate employability, enhance quality of life, and contribute to the realization of dreams and aspiration. Personal development is personal. It takes work to be you. You know, we have to take medicine, and I have to take my blood pressure medicine, cholesterol, etc. That medicine kind of upsets my stomach sometimes, so I can't take my medicine on a full stomach. So medicine is not supposed to be pleasant a lot of time. And that's what David was saying. David was saying, you know, it's supposed to hurt. When you face yourself, when you realize the stuff, the gunk that you have been surrounded by, and you got to come out of, and you got to clean yourself. That's a painful process. And a lot of times we don't want to face that. We don't want to face the music. You know, a lot of people talk about, I'm going to keep it real. I want the truth. A lot of people can't handle the truth. If I keep it 100 and tell it like a TI is, we own one. And we are mean, we're hateful, we're selfish, and realizing how off I really am, it takes work. That's why my coach work on you. David says this is as recent as 14 months ago. I was in a relationship. I was married for 28 years. And I didn't realize how negative some of that time really was until I stepped away from it. And I'm not throwing shade on anybody. I'm not trying to belittle anybody or post blame, etc. But when you are conditioned, it's gonna take time to become unconditioned. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I challenge everybody. I've been talking to my goddaughter pretty much every day. Be careful of the type of relationship you're gonna jump into, because you got to weigh: are more of my days happy or more of my days sad? And you have to evaluate that. I can't tell you what to do, but I need you to work on you. You need to get either a therapist or you need a life coach. You need to sharpen your piece of iron. It takes work. You're not going to get a beach body without doing what it takes to get a beach body. Everybody want to look like that Instagram picture. Thank you so much, Dave, for being here. Everybody want to look like that Instagram model. But it takes work. You see The Rock, you see LeBron, you see all those athletes in the gym, you see all these football players in the gym. It takes work. David said this is as recent as 14 months ago. David acknowledged, I am evolving. I'm getting a little bit better every day. And every now and then I got to be jolted back into place and listen, hey, hold up now. Hold up. That sounds like the old David. That sounds like the old Walter. Okay, work on you. I challenge you. And if you need some help, do you need a life coach? Contact me, Dr. Sims at drwaltersims.com. Business owner, remember, personal development is a business expense. Check out this video from Liz. Hey Liz, how has it been to have me as your life coach?
It's been a life-changing experience, honestly, Dr. Sims. Since I first met you on Periscope or watched you, you always brought a smile to my life and helped me through the darkest times and helped me learn the methods that would improve my life. I've had a lot of issues over the years with, mental health issues, depression, anxiety, relationship issues, things like that. And I've worked with so many different people, psychologists, psychiatrists, and there's nothing that's been more impactful and made a difference in my life than your coaching has.
Oh, thank you. Do you suggest that people that need a life coach reach out to me?
Yes. Like I said, I hit so many dead ends working with psychologists and even like different, cognitive therapy, different types of techniques. And I have not seen any results from all of that work in over so many years until I finally started working with you. And it's changed my life.
Amen. Thank you. Hey, Liz, what would you say the biggest thing that you have learned working with a life coach?
The biggest thing is to be honest. You have to trust your life coach 100%. And that means being honest with him or them and yourself. And you have to do the homework. No one's going to change it for you. They're there to guide you. They're your coach. They will show you the way. It's up to you to make the change and be honest and trust yourself, trust your coach, and trust the process.
Did I ever tell you what to do?
No. You helped me come to the realization on my own and guided me in a way that made me feel comfortable with the decision and knowing what I have to do inside myself.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Hey now, if you'd like to donate today to the Dr. Walter Sims Show, please donate at Cash App, $Walter H. Sims. Yes, that's Cash App, $WalterHSims. That's Cash App, $Walter H.
Hey, again, we want to thank David for being here today. We got a great show lined up on Friday. Just remember, work on you. This thing is individual. Like David said, this thing is individual. I'm going through this. I'm not talking about anybody else. This is necessary for me. What I'm going through, what I do, what I put together, what I'm working on every day, this is so that I can be a better servant to you, and you. You know what I'm saying? So my challenge for you is, and I'm teaching a training class on Thursdays, how to find a job, how to keep a job. And we just went over personal development. I'm gonna talk about communication and time on Thursday. You gotta take the time. You gotta use some initiative to work on you. The shell now, you look good on the outside, but what's that engine going through? Is your engine full of gunk and junk, or are you running like a well-oiled machine? It takes work. And we applaud people that's on that next level. We ooh and ah. They're not superhuman. They're not aliens. They made a decision. You got to make a decision. You got to be intentional. I am going to be better tomorrow than I am today. I'm better today than I was yesterday. That thing that tripped you up, you ought to be able to step over it now. All right? Y'all, I got to get out of here. But listen, as I always say, if you stay high on life, life is going to stay high on you.
If you invest your time instead of spend it, and if you think about all the time that you spent, all the things that you've done today, and you have this goal in mind of what you want to accomplish, how much of your time was spent and how much was it invested in your goal? And how positive was your attitude toward trying to accomplish that goal?